Let me start recording started. So we are talking about the way in which man picks up information, stores it in the brain, creates stories around what we see and what is there, amalgamates all of this together, makes it more interesting. Am I right? Now, if you watch
Yeah.
an accident or if you just watch a crowd, and if you want to go back and go home and tell your partner or tell your girlfriend or tell your family that, hey, look, I saw something. If you just tell them that, okay, I saw one crowd and I saw a group of people and I heard some noises and I think it was an accident, probably your story or your narration is not going to draw much attention. And therefore, you would also want to, I guess, add a little interesting stuff to that. Or maybe you may just want to create it into you might want to make it into a mystery and convert it into an interesting story in
So
order to communicate.
are you
Am I
trying to add a point to like add feelings and bringing the different emotions into picture? Because until and unless you are not adding it,
huh?
your story will not be sounding interested to any of your audience.
Absolutely. I may either add emotions or I will use all my creativity to
Correct.
create or to make that simple thing that you saw into a much, much more interesting thing. We have all heard of the left brain and right brain concept of learning, where you want to create a picture in the other person's mind. Because we have also created pictures. I'll go back to auditory learning, visual learning, where we or kinesthetic learning. You're drawing upon touch points in the listener's mind so that you again store that in the other person's learning. Now, friends, why I'm telling you all this, or why am I looking at all of this, is when we do training, or when we actually conduct a training session in whatever method, but since we are going to be looking, Miss Karishma, I'll come to you just a second. When we are going to be looking at the lecture method or the brainstorming or the discussion method, one of the key points over there is how can I make it more interesting, more alluring, and more attractive to the other person so that learning gets retained. Am I right over here? All right. And that's where the power of communication, the power of creating stories comes in. Karishma, over to you.
Thank
That
you,
will also
ma'am.
give me some
Yeah.
room to, yeah, Miss Karishma. Over to
Yeah.
you, ma'am.
So, ma'am, when you were talking about the incident on the road and
Can
you
you
were
be a little
asking,
louder?
am I audible now? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, ma'am, when you started talking about communication, you did mention about somebody. I could not hear the name of the person. Some writer or
I,
something. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, I mentioned Yuval Noah Harari.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Okay. But if you actually want to look at communication, just as an aside, I also wanted, I also refer to Noam Chomsky, who did a lot of study on communication language studies, where he spoke about how sounds, have been given various connotations and meanings so that people. All right. Uh, just a sec. Just a sec. I'm connecting to my air dopes. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
audible.
Ma'am, you're on mute.
Ma'am, you are not audible.
Dr. Rita, you're speaking on mute.
Madam, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we
I
can
was
hear you.
Yes.
I was deliberately on mute because I was connecting to my microphones. Right? So yeah, where were we? We were talking about. I think Miss Karishma was saying something. Over to you, Miss Karishma. Can you?
No, ma'am, you were not audible and everybody was trying to connect with you. So I raised my hand. Probably I thought it'll get your attention.
Okay, fine. So we were talking about how people create stories. We were talking about how people make uh, uh, make up visual theories in their mind so that they are able to retain knowledge. Now, why did we speak about all of this before I opened my PowerPoint? Today, we thought we will look at what you call as theories around learning. Now, friends, I would also like to say that after these theories were created, there's a lot today that has been done on learning and learning practices. But since these are all etched in psychology, let we just thought that we'll look at all of these, and these are also important from your code's point of view because you may have to write a few answers with regard to learning theories. All right, uh, and that's where we looked at. Let me introduce you to three learning theories that we are talking about. The first one is behaviorism. Then we also speak about cognitivism. And the third one is what you're calling as the constructivism or constructivist behavioral theories. Okay. Uh, Now, why are these important? You can take a look at this. We said behavior learning theory, cognitive learning theory, and the constructivist learning theory. Very simple, very simple. What would one mean by a behavior learning theory? Anyone? Anyone? It's
Enforcing
not
the
rocket.
positive reinforcement in the session to the
Okay.
participants, so that they know. When you basically do something better, then you actually get the positive reinforcement, basically, which
Mhm.
encourages actual participation in the session.
Okay. What
So
you're
In
with
talking.
simple words, it's a change in behavior due to some learning happening.
Okay. You
Ma'am,
said
when there is a
change.
stimuli and someone is responding to that stimuli, that is called behavior. So if I am doing something and someone is reacting to it, that is behavior. And when we talk about behavioral, when we want to maybe make a positive change into the reaction of the person.
All right. If I throw a stone at you today, if I throw a stone at you, what is your response? What would be your response?
So I would
Maybe
like to
dodge.
be safe, stay away from the path of the stone coming towards me.
Okay. So that
And
speaks
some might
about,
also react
yeah.
by throwing another stone at the person. So
Okay.
people will be reacting differently to different situations like that.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you're saying that you may either retreat and duck back to
Fight
avoid
or
this.
flight.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
And the next time the soul is okay, so this is something that you will do, or you may also want to throw back a stone at me or throw back something bigger so that I don't throw a stone again at you ever
Correct.
again. All right.
Yes.
So that is something that you would like to do. Yeah. Somebody else wanted to say something. Yeah. How would you, Krupa? Yeah.
Yes,
Krupa.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good
So
morning.
I will be doing like first I will save myself and then I'll pick another bigger stone and
Yeah.
throw.
You would throw. That means
Uh,
you may want to get better. What is the basic what is the basic psychology behind this? I want to be safe, and you don't ever do something like this to me, right? So,
Yes.
okay. Now, this is something that you said you would do at the first instance. All right? At the first instance. If I keep on throwing stones at you over and over again, the second time, third time, what would be your response and your reaction? If I continue to do this, what would be your response every time?
So then my response will I'll save myself, and there are 100% chances that I'll move away from that place and would not be in the sight of that person.
Okay, so that which means that the next time, okay, you look at me, thanks. When the next time you look at me, you would be careful and you would know that here is a Rita who is in the habit of throwing stones at people. Now, typically, uh, I would like to go a little into the workplace scenario. Workplace scenario. How many of us have come across people who tend to speak negatively at work? Or let's say an instance where a person continuously catches hold of you in the corridor and says things to you which the first time you listen to the person, the second time you listen to the person, this guy always says something which rankles with you. Either he makes a personal comment or a nasty comment against the company, or also tries to speak about his own story. Uh, First time you listen, second time you listen. What do you do the third time? Unless you're interested in listening to the story. What would you do the third time?
I'll try to avoid the person.
Would
मैम
avoid
क्या
the
प्रॉब्लम है?
okay, so you would ask क्या problem है? Okay.
तेरा क्या
Uh,
प्रॉब्लम है मेरे साथ?
okay.
I
Is that
might
what you would
answer
want
back
to ask?
for
You
this
may
one.
want to answer back or you may want to avoid. Now, what has happened is in the first two or three instances, you have observed that this behavior is something, this, this is the way it is going on. So your learning has taken place and you have decided your response. So through a series of stimuli that you have been given, you have decided that the next time I meet this person, I will speak only positive things, or I will keep a smile on my face and change the topic, or I will avoid the person. I will find some other route to go to my workstation so that I don't meet this person again. Isn't that so? Now look at that. People learn through stimulus and response. People learn that you give them something and they know which is the most optimum way of doing. So that's the school of thought for behaviorist learning. Uh, Now here, the psychologists who have worked at John Watson, B.F. Skinner, and Ivan Pavlov. Now all of us, I think, in school also, we all learned Pavlov's learning theory, right? Okay. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, all of us. What was Pavlov's experiment? What was Pavlov's experiment? Something that we learned in psychology, something that we learned in biology in school. Uh, Ivan Pavlov, which animal did he experiment with?
A
Dog.
dog.
With the dog. And what did he do? What did
Uh,
he do? Yes.
he
So
he
when
changed
he
the
rings the bell,
neutral. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please.
yeah. So when like Pablo rings the bell, the dog starts salivating. So initially, like there was no response, but when he started giving a bone or a piece of meat to the dog, and after
Hmm.
that, it was just the bell. And once the dog hears ringing of the bell,
Hmm.
automatically he starts salivating. So that was the theory.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like
So the
he changed a neutral stimulus into a conditioned one, something like that.
oh, okay.
Basically, ma'am, he
Huh.
used the stimulus response, wherein he made the dog learn that when a certain kind of stimulus is done, it will get a
Hmm.
reward. So the dog
Okay.
started automatically correlating the stimulus with a reward being given.
So there is a stimulus, right? There is a response, and to elicit that response, what you have is a reward at the end of this. At the end, for behaving in a particular manner. This is typically something that we all did when we wanted children to eat something. Am I right? So you have this, then I'll give you a chocolate later on. I was traveling by train, and I had a passenger. She had a 2-year-old son who was traveling. Then I gave that little one a chocolate. The mother immediately took it away from him, and she said, "You eat the chapati first, you finish your 2 chapatis, and then I'll give you this chocolate." And I was amazed to see the change in behavior immediately. For the sake of that chocolate, the child finished eating both the chapatis and immediately said, "Now give me my dairy milk." All right. So a classic case over there of behavioral theory where you're giving a stimulus to the person, you're showing the person a reward, and you're actually getting a person to behave in a particular manner. All right. Stimulus response, and somewhere we are looking at reward being given. Now, 3 types of behavioral theory. You can note this down somewhere, or maybe when I send you the PowerPoint, you can also look at it. Classical conditioning, typical traditional style, operant conditioning, where you're using something, and observational learning, where people learn by watching others behave in a particular manner, and that's where your learning becomes stronger in you. All right. Now let's look at the first kind of uh, behavioral learning. We are speaking about classical conditioning. You're conditioning it people in a very classic, or in a traditional manner, to show that a neutral stimulus, when I say a neutral stimulus, a tone or a sound becomes associated with that stimulus. For example, typically when a child is crying for milk, and when the baby hears that the mother is stirring the mug, okay, or stirring the sugar into the milk, the sound of the spoon which is used to stir the sugar in the milk can actually make the uh, baby uh, quieten down for a little bit. Why is that so? So typically, the mother uses some sound or something which will indicate to the baby that, look, your milk is arriving, your glass of milk, it will come to you, or your bottle of milk, or whatever. Typically, the sound of the spoon, or maybe the sound of the milk being poured into the bottle or in the glass, or whatever. That's the sound which the baby associates with that of food coming. Am I right? Okay. And what is the stimulus? The stimulus is the food that you're giving to the person, and it creates a certain type of behavior. Either the baby quietens down, or like Pavlov did, the dog started salivating, getting ready, or getting hungry. Uh, can you give me any other stimulus that can make you hungry or start salivating? If there is there something which is a natural, or sorry, a neutral stimulus?
Smell of food.
Yes,
Smell of the food.
smell of the food, like the aroma that comes in. Oh, you know that this is pastry being cooked, or being baked. I'm sorry for my English. So these are all stimuli, and they produce a certain type of behavior. Now, friends, uh, these are natural things in the society overall. How can we connect this to the corporate world? Is there something like a neutral stimulus that gets associated, come on, with a response, sorry, which produces a
Ma'am,
certain
if I
type of
may,
yeah.
ma'am, in certain restaurants, I have seen they have this kind of a bell where
Mm,
if the customer likes the food, they ring the bell.
mm,
So over a period of time, the others who are eating, they also start
mm.
associating this ringing of bell with the restaurant doing well.
Okay, okay. So you're storing in your mind, you're learning that this is a good place to eat in. all right? And your hunger, whatever pants, or then you start kind of feeling hungry when you go to this particular place. Can we go to a corporate or a workplace example here where there is a stimulus that produces a certain type of behavior? Can we think of rewards? Can we think? Yeah.
Can I?
Yes. Yes, please.
So maybe when we are doing a role play or an activity, and
Hmm.
we keep gifts around the table, and we say that if you win this activity, you might earn a reward.
Okay. So you're giving a reward to a person based on, acha, in a role play, you're saying you get a reward. We're talking about learning in a role play.
Yes.
Wonderful. Has gone to the training setup. Absolutely. In a training setup, typically, people also use chocolates or small toffees, or you say the group has a reward. When you're playing a team game, if you announce that the best team gets a reward, you'll suddenly see that everyone getting together into the team and wanting to win that little prize. Is it actually about winning the prize, or what is it? Is it that they want that reward in terms of that little chocolate or whatever? Or is it something else that they want? What is it like? If you have a,
Maybe
let's say, huh,
recognition,
okay,
appreciation.
recognition, appreciation, just that well done. I've had students walk up to me after their presentations. When you ask students to make presentations, and when one student makes a presentation, I say, well done. The second student makes a presentation, I say, excellent. And the third student, probably I'm bored of using the term over and over again, and I may just keep quiet and just, applaud and keep quiet. The students come and ask
And
me,
for
ma'am,
generating
आपने मुझे,
revenue, for generating revenue,
sorry,
you will generate more,
generate,
then the company
generate,
provides incentive.
yes, yes,
In- For getting
generate more, for getting
incentives,
incentives. So you're talking about monetary incentives. You're
incentive.
yes.
Yeah.
Uh, the entire reward management theory or performance management concept, if you look at it, has been developed around classical conditioning. We are getting people to behave or perform in a certain manner by keeping what you call as the line of sight criteria, which is you do this, you will get this. So there's a car waiting, or there's a Honda City waiting for you at the end of this particular project. All right. So people then are willing to change themselves. People are willing to create. And sometimes, sometimes this behavior happens even without your consciously knowing that you're changing or behaving in a particular manner. Now, did the dog know that he or she is salivating? Does the baby know that the baby has quieted down and become hungry? Or has it happened as a subconscious process? It's happened as a natural subconscious process, right? And that's where we are talking about the conditioning happens in a particular way. Now, uh, another example which I would like to give over here is that of learning from seniors or learning from the reactions of seniors. For example, if I walk up to my senior and I say that I want to take leave, or let's say since we are talking about learning itself, if I walk up to my senior and I say, sir, I can't do this job because I don't know this particular software. I can't do this, and I need someone, or maybe I need some assistance. Just by looking at the response of my superior or my boss, I may know whether my superior is happy or unhappy with my saying. Sometimes, how many of us, I mean, be honest, have changed or aligned our behavior based on the expressions of, the responding expressions of the superior or the leader? Have we or have we not? Is he smiling? Yes, I
Yes,
can see that a lot of hands are
Yes,
up.
ma'am.
Is he
according.
smiling? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
What do I see in in his eyes? What do I see in her expression? What do I see in her body language? And that tells me something. And without my knowledge, I'll probably the first thing that I would do is go back and learn that particular software. Why? Because the job has to get done. How many of us cancel our leave based on the expressions that we see on our superior space? Now that's what we're talking about when you say associated with a stimulus or the stimulus could be anything that we look as something that is accepted behavior and not accepted behavior. Can I put it like that? Can we say accepted behavior and non-accepted behavior? Typically, people who have to dress in a particular manner or communicate in a manner. My colleague says that every day is a battle in communication. Someday you do it right, someday you don't do it right. But every day you're learning how to communicate. And that, I guess, becomes part of the classical conditioning where the reward or the stimulus decides how the person changes, and then that learning becomes steady or it becomes absorbed in the particular person's mind. Okay. Uh, any views here before I go to Skinner's or Skinnerian conditioning? Any views here? Any comments that you would like to make?
Ma'am, for classical conditioning, I'll tell you that,
Yeah.
for example, I take classes in different colleges. For example, Symbiosis, that I go
Hmm,
to an Adit Institute of Management. The
hmm,
class that I'm having at Symbiosis, there my body language is different, my tone is different. In
hmm,
fact, my pronunciation is different. And when I come to the bit middle level B schools,
hmm.
everything changes according to the crowd that I am actually delivering to. So I would say that it is based on the crowd that I am delivering the lecture or something. I am changing or adjusting my personality accordingly so that I could connect well.
Okay. This
Ma'am,
was
one
Meera who was speaking.
Pratibha ma'am.
Pratibha. So Pratibha, I mean, what you're talking is very interesting. Ma'am, I'll come to you next. Uh, you know what? Here, see how the teacher is also changing. This is a classic example of how even the facilitator has to change according to the absorbing styles of the learners, right? So how do people learn? Then in order that they actually absorb what you're giving them, the teacher also has to modify the stimulus or the change. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. Because if I
Yes.
don't change, they won't be able to connect with me, and if they won't connect, they won't be able to learn. This is simple.
Wonderful. Yes, of course. So it's matching of both styles. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Somebody else, ma'am, someone else. Thank you for that, Pratibha. Uh, Someone else was also wanting to say something. I can't see over
Ma'am,
here
I
who's
just
talking.
wanted to add on to Pratibha's whatever Pratibha said. This is Neha speaking, ma'am. I think we do make a lot of changes in the way we deliver depending on our audience. And that is through experience or somehow intuitively also we do that by looking at their body language and how they're receiving us. So as an L&D person, when we deliver trainings, we do look into the body language of the audience and try to, even if we have not come prepared, if it has like a extempore sort of a thing, even then we try to change the way we interact with them in terms of the pronunciation, as Pratibha said very lightly, and the choice of words, whether the delivery will be conducted in the original language or we will be doing it completely in English. All that depends a lot on the audience, is what I think, ma'am.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. All right. So
Yeah, ma'am, this is,
mm, yeah,
you just
yes,
wanted to ask one thing, ma'am. Like, when we see one of our seniors in office shouting at someone, his mood is not good, and we have to discuss something important. So we just postpone that. So is it example of classical conditioning?
Can you repeat? Can you repeat?
Yeah. I'm Preeti. I was just asking, like, is this example of classical conditioning? If we see one of our seniors shouting at someone or his mood is not fine, and we need to discuss something important with him, so we just postpone that. We
Yeah.
just yeah, we see like his mood is not okay, so maybe we'll go after 1 hour. So is this example of classical conditioning?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Where you're saying that, okay, this is actually a combination of observational learning as well as classical learning. This would go more into observational learning, where you're seeing that, okay, here is somebody, there is something happening over here, and this is exactly not the right mood because he's screaming. So you learn over a period of time that when he's not in a good mood, it's not the time to go and meet him. All right. So, in due course of time, after three or four such instances, it becomes fixed in your mind. I will not go and meet this person when he is in this kind of mood. So, it would be a combination, okay, of
Okay, thank you,
observational
ma'am.
and classical. Thanks. Yeah, Mr. Anamitra, you wanted to say something, sir? Yes. There's a hand raised by two people. Uh, if you don't want to, then I will move to
Dr.
what?
Rita, just
Yeah,
wanted to understand one more situation. I think the
definitely.
situation which Preeti just mentioned, where
Yeah.
you, I think, made her understand that this is a combination of observational as well as behavioral conditioning. Correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, for example, let's say if you are actually in the conversation
Hmm.
of your superior,
Hmm.
and suddenly, like when you start talking to him, and then he's
Hmm.
actually showcasing or maybe I think responding with anxiety or maybe with certain
Disapproval.
annoyance, and
Yeah.
then you are actually changing your decision or maybe you are taking a step back, and then
Hmm.
rather than uh, getting into that conversation, you are changing the conversation.
Hmm.
That will become a example of classical conditioning,
Yes.
because you know that the reward is not going to be earned, so that is why
Hmm.
you are actually changing the overall mood of the conversation.
Yes. You're changing the overall mood. That means you're changing your behavior.
Correct.
All right. And why have you changed your behavior? You have learned that the other type of behavior is not accepted or is not appreciated. So
Got it.
when you're talking of a reward, a simple smile can be a reward, or a
Absolutely.
simple yes, good or bad, can be a reward. It doesn't have to be a physical reward as such. All right. Whereas you learn that the other type of behavior is more accepted and more likely to be appreciated. And we're talking here simply about something that is connected, and that connection makes you behave in a particular way. A lot of people say now that when my boss's light is off, okay, I don't feel like working. That means, sometimes that reinforces learning. So for different people, the stimulus may be different, but over a period of time, that habit or that conditioned behavior becomes fixed. That means every time the bell rings, the dog will salivate. Are we getting? Every
Yeah.
time the bell rings, the dog will start salivating. But the question over here is whether there is a bone or there isn't a bone is a different question altogether.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
that's what we are associating. We are connecting, and there is a neural Wi-Fi, like Stephen Covey says, which gets connected. All right. The second type of conditioning here we are looking at where you say instrumental conditioning. So when I say instrumental conditioning, if I do this, I will get this consequence of my behavior. You behave well, you will get your reward. So typically, uh, a certain type of behavior is reinforced through a series of what you call, I would say, consequences or what happens after that. So in Skinner's conditioning, B.F. Skinner, there was a mouse, there wasn't a dog.
and on tapping something, the dog was given sorry, the mouse was given popcorn. So he realized that if he presses or a certain lever, he's going to have access to the popcorn which is on the other side of the box. Now typically this is what you call as compliance oriented behavior in an organization. For example, you do your due diligence, you do this, and based on this, you will get this. Now, standard operating procedures in an organization. All right. Another thing now, since we are talking about learning, anyone from banks over here, from the public sector, banking sector?
Yes, ma'am. I am Ravindra from State Bank of India.
Yes. So do you have your bank exams? They say you have the language exams. People have to take up a series of examinations for their promotions.
Yes,
Am
ma'am.
I
Up to
right? Yeah,
three,
yeah.
there is the examination.
Sorry?
Up to scale
Can-
3 promotion from assistant manager to manager grade, there is promotional exams.
There are promotional exams. So you have to pass those exams to be able to get your promotion, right?
Yes.
And like I remember because someone in my family wrote her Hindi exams. It says that if I take this exam in Hindi, I will get my X number of increments. I don't know whether that system exists anymore in
Yes, ma'am.
State Bank
Actually,
of
there
India.
are two exams, JIB and CIB, conducted by IIBF. If you
Okay.
pass JIB, then you will get one increment, and if you pass
Hmm.
CIB, then you will
Hmm.
get two increments, permanent increment in your salary.
Okay. Can I call that an example in operant conditioning? We're using or
Yes,
other
ma'am.
instrumental conditioning. So you're actually using here, and here I would say you're using learning as an instrument for a person's growth. For example, today, if people don't know Excel or if they don't know technology, they become redundant in an organization. Yes or no? No, if you say that I don't know computers, there's no place for me. I have to. Certain jobs would require me to speak a certain type of English or a certain type of Hindi or a certain type of behavior. This is required for me to get my increments or my growth in the organization. Now, how does leadership development happen? Unless you behave in a particular manner. I remember once in a business etiquette training program, one of the gentlemen coming from a very, very modest background paid up money on his own and said that I want to, develop my personality. I want to learn how to dress up. I want to learn how to talk. I need to, I mean, refine my manners. I want to learn sensitivity and improve my communication skills. Why? Because I have been earmarked for a promotion and my organization has asked me to develop these skills. So that became, an instrument, what do you say, his lever to growth. Friends, I hope I'm making sense over here, right? So people will then definitely decide how to change their dressing style, how to change their speaking style, how to walk in a particular manner. Why? Because there is a reinforcement for that and it is encouraged through a series of rewards. That is where I am talking about what you say, operant conditioning. Now, the other thing is, operant conditioning may not only depend on uh, rewards, there could also be punitive measures, punishments, right? Uh, if you don't learn or if you don't change your behavior, then it could also lead to whatever ways. It could, you may lose an increment, or you may be transferred to another department, whatever. So punishments also form operant condition, or what you call as Skinnerian conditioning. All right. Yeah, I can see that two or three people have raised their hands. Yes. Is there any
So
example? that
Yeah,
you wish
Dr.
to say?
Rangnekar, I just wanted to
Yeah,
understand one thing. The way you
yeah.
explained that overall our performance management and the reward management is
Hmm,
revolving around the first
hmm,
conditioning, which we understood the classical conditioning.
hmm.
So here, when we
Okay.
are talking about the operant or the instrumental one, the
Hmm,
consequence management is
hmm.
actually revolving around this particular conditioning.
Sorry, what management?
Consequence management. So where you are actually,
Consequence management.
yeah,
Yeah.
consequence management.
Yes, definitely. Here, I would like to speak about motivation. How do you motivate? Either
Okay.
through positive reinforcement or through negative reinforcement. Yeah?
Hmm.
So if you do this, and I mean, you will get this. This is a reward for you. All right.
Okay.
But if you don't do this, you are not going to get this, or there could be another type of punishment waiting for you. Right?
One more
Yeah.
question which I really wanted to understand. I think
Huh.
while reading about the conditioning very long back, I think I just came up with an example of elephants. So when the
Hmm.
catchers used to catch elephants, they used to hunt a baby elephant rather than a young or
Hmm.
maybe a adult one.
Hmm.
And then they used to tie that particular elephant with the very heavy metal chains.
Chain. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
later on, when the this elephant is actually growing up and then become the adult one, then they
Hmm.
remove that chain, the metal
Hmm.
chain, and instead of
Hmm.
doing that, they are just putting a rope around the
Hmm.
leg of that elephant. But
Hmm.
still, that elephant is
Hmm.
not trying. Why? Because he has already been conditioned into that situation. So, with which kind
Yes.
of a conditioning we can relate it to?
That actually is a classical conditioning, na?
Okay.
Because it happened in the beginning itself, right? So the baby elephant has grown up with that chain around. So isn't
True.
it a classical conditioning thing, correct? Uh, uh, where you're not showing something to the elephant to reinforce, but in the elephant's till the time the baby grows into a full-grown elephant, that the feeling of that chain is so strongly embedded in the I mean, wherever I mean, elephant's mind that it is a case of classical conditioning. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah,
Right?
because I think there no
Huh.
reward is actually
No,
associated with it.
no.
There is a pain. There is
There
a
is
kind of a feeling that I would not be in a position to break it.
yes, yes. So maybe the elephant does not even recognize that this is not a chain, but this is a rope now around me. But the minute it sees that it's a typical type of classical conditioning because you're associating with a feeling of pain or a physical condition, right? Uh, Now, when we're talking about all of this, we also have to understand that a lot of these things are kind of uh, what would you say? They're a combination of everything. It could be a case of classical conditioning reinforced by again showing that chain to the elephant where it says, oh my God, if I do this, then probably that chain will be back on my feet again, right? So
Okay.
combination of classical and operant conditioning. Now these are two different experiments made by two different psychologists. Long and short of it is that you would use a series of learning ways to drive home the learning or drive
Sure.
home a particular type of behavior. Makes sense? Yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. One more hand raised. Should
Ma'am,
I? Yeah.
uh, ma'am, I
Ma'am, can
wanted
I
to
come in
ask
here?
in certain companies when
Hmm,
the manager tends to stay up late and work, the
hmm,
people under him also stay up whether they have work or not, whether they want to leave or not. So can we
hmm.
call this something like a operant conditioning where they feel that if they leave while the manager is sitting and working overtime, then they will
Hmm.
lose out on maybe certain rewards or something later which the manager will give.
Is the manager giving a reward for staying late,
It is a
or is
perceived
the
reward on their part where they feel the manager will have a better image of the people below him who stay up as much
hmm.
as the manager stays up late.
That I guess would be observational learning? All right, we're talking about when you see and you're actually observing your manager over a period of time You're saying that look at this gentleman, he stays back late every day. And probably that's the reason why he's growing to where he is. But if there's a reward that's being given at the end of the month, there is a record being kept of okay, how many people stay late. And as a result of which, okay, here is a reward for them. Maybe they get an incentive, or maybe they get 2 days off, or they get something else, a better uh, seating space. That would be a reinforcement on people who did not stay late. Like, for example, I remember once for a very critical project, uh, when a team stayed up late, and the supporting team, some of them stayed up late and the others did not. So the next day they were called for a meeting, and and communicated in no uncertain terms that although we did not make it compulsory for you, those of you who stayed back definitely showed the signs of organizational citizenship behavior, whereas those of you who did not stay, it showed that you didn't care. Now that is where there is a communication involved with that. That is when it becomes what would you say, operant conditioning. Does that make sense to you? Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, typically, we are talking about how does operant conditioning happen? And theory says that there are four types of operant conditioning. We are talking about positive reinforcement. So you're adding a reward. You're saying that, okay, fine, you stay back late, or you learn this particular language, we give you two increments. You stay back late, it will definitely be considered as a browning point, and it will be considered in your performance appraisal, or you're adding a reward. When you're negative reinforcers, okay, when you're saying negative reinforcers, you're removing of a punishment, or removing of a reward also. Sorry, when you're talking about should I remove this reward, or should I, add this particular reward? So positive punishers are where you're actually adding a punishment. Now, please don't correlate this with the word positive and with the word negative. Now, typically, when I say positive, you're thinking of the happier side of things, right? But in operant conditioning, when these reinforcers, so when you say positive reinforcing, you're adding a reward. And when you're saying negative reinforcing, you're removing a particular punishment. Are we getting that? So there is a punishment which is already there, but you're removing that particular punishment. Positive reinforcers are adding of a punishment, and negative punishers are removal of a particular reward. So these are the four types of operant conditioning that we have. That's the way Albert Bandura has made. All right. Uh,
And sorry
Bolo.
to interrupt. uh,
Yeah.
can an example of negative enforcement be that, say, if at all, in an organization, if people come late to office more than 3 times, their half day leave will be, deducted. But if they change the policy saying that if you are late for more than 3 times, we won't be doing that, or something like that. If a change in policy would mean removing of a negative enforcement,
Yes, definitely.
reinforcement.
If you change your behavior, if you change your behavior, if you learn, that particular penalty will be removed. Okay, so it could be removal of a particular punishment. Saying I will not do this to you. You know, so sometimes people, uh, sometimes people learn only through punishments, adding of a punishment and removal of a punishment. Some people will learn only through adding a reward and removing a reward. That is what motivates them, right? So when I say removal of a punishment, something that is already there, something that is already there for a certain type of behavior will be removed if you do not do this. If you don't repeat this particular behavior, or if you don't learn. All right. That's where you are talking about removal of a yes. 3 times if you are late, then half a day salary will be deducted, or 1 day CL will go away. That is already a policy which is there. But if people keep on coming on time, now it all depends on how I purchase. Am I coming on time because I want to come on time, or because I'm afraid that I will lose my salary or I will lose my one skill? So it depends on how the learner perceives. Does the learner learn through punishments, or does the learner learn through rewards? Different people behave in different ways, right? Uh, Many times a person would say that I will I will go through this training, I will attend this training because I don't want to lose my job. Correct? Way earlier, when computerization happened, people actually, a lot of people were retrenched, or they were given the golden handshake, early retirement. A lot of people, because the company wanted to change all its systems, and they said that if you don't learn or if you don't change something, then you will lose your job. So people who decided to become technically upgraded were the ones who were kept on the job. Are we getting this? That becomes a removal of a punishment because you have behaved or you have learned something that the organization wants you to learn. Addition of a punishment is where you're saying, in addition to this will also go. You will lose your incentives, and also 50% of your salary will be cut. Does that make sense to you, ma'am? Who
Yes,
answered
ma'am.
that?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, it does.
It does. Okay. The third type of learning that we are talking about here with Bandura is observational learning. And this is my forte because here we are talking about social learning theories. All right. Watching other people's behaviors. Anyone wants to say something here? Learning by watching somebody else's behavior. Please, can anyone give me an example of something that you learned by watching someone at work?
In the
A
service
certain type.
industry, the buddy up sessions.
Okay.
So
Which
when you are
industry?
actually buddy up sessions, it means like when you are actually trying to train a new higher entrant, then you are
Okay.
bringing that particular person to the shop floor, making him
Hmm.
sit aside or maybe besides one of the seasoned or a veteran one to understand that how he is actually managing the transactions or talking to the customer.
Hmm. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. You're watching what he does, how he talks to people, what he does in critical situations, and you're actually absorbing that behavior and repeating that particular behavior. Learning by watching, and again, here we're saying learning by modeling.
Correct.
This, yeah, correct? Am I right? Now,
Yeah.
this typically I'll go a little into the arena of politics. I will go a little into the arena of international behavior, and I'll take you back to the olden times when apparently, I don't know how many of you will like my example, but they said that when Princess Diana she came into the royal family, uh, the English they wear hats. The women are required to wear hats, and Princess Diana, because of her beautiful hair, uh, wouldn't wear hats. Wouldn't wear a hat. She was not used to it. She came from a normal middle class family, and it was not part of her culture. Uh, because of her aura and her charisma and the kind of fan following that she had with the women all over the world, the British women stopped wearing hats. They all wanted to show their hair. And that was very, very damaging to hat makers in England. And they actually took the entire association went and met the Queen, where the Queen had to request her daughter-in-law to start wearing a hat because hat makers were running out of business, right? Now, typically, social learning theory is all about the way you start behaving by watching people who you admire or who you feel are doing the right thing. So people at work learn by watching their leaders. People at work learn by watching their bosses. People at work learn by watching their colleagues who get better rewards or whose behavior is accepted. You may see that, okay, if I behave like this will help me to get a good performance, and you behave accordingly. So when you're talking of watching others and modeling a particular behavior, this kind of training would be used, shall I say, in the airlines, where you teach the staff or the crew how to serve, in hotels, where you actually show the actions to people and you watch what better people do. Uh, Another example or another instance that another concept that you can relate over here is, have you all heard of competency mapping? Yes, no?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Now,
Yes.
what is the difference
Yes,
between a,
we used
yeah,
to do in a factory level.
you're doing that,
I-
right? Okay, so friends, I'll just
Yes.
take you a little bit into the concept of competence and competency. Uh, is there a difference? What would you mean by a competence and what would you mean by
Ma'am, please
competency?
elaborate about the competency learning.
Would you want me to do that? Okay. Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
see,
Yeah, ma'am. Actually,
yeah, Bolo. Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Someone
On
said,
the in the competency mapping, exactly means we map the each and individual employee to know their knowledge
hmm,
skills. Yeah, to know their knowledge skills and related to their organization, we get to know. Uh, Sometimes what happens to the employee, we just do the promotions and all, which is
may I request, yeah. Um, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think there was somebody's mic or somebody's speaker was. Competency mapping is is a process conducted by by organizations to ensure that you get people with the best competencies and you benchmark behaviors and you benchmark competencies so that the company performs at its optimum. How do people behave in certain uh, in certain critical situations based on their competencies? So what's the difference between competence and competency? For example, I may be highly qualified, I may be very good in finance, or I may be very good in something because of my education, because of my skill, and because of my qualification and my degree. That becomes my competence. All right. I'm competent in, let's say, HR management, or I'm competent in recruitment. But the difference between a competence and a competency, and I say competency, uh, every time I do that particular process, the result that I get is always at a certain level. So when a person does something, when a person does something, if the end impact or the outcome or the output is at a certain level, then that becomes that person's competency. To give you a simple example, to give you a very, very simple example, okay, it's about handling the time, like someone said, handling a customer. Every time this person handles a customer, the customer always goes back satisfied. So the competence is there, but the person is using this particular competence to get a certain type of result. That is what you call as a person's competency. All right. So in a competency management exercise, okay, which an HR department would do, the you're listing out certain behaviors of a particular person in that particular role to find out what he or she does. What are the set of actions or what are the set of processes that this particular person goes through in order to arrive at that particular output or as a result? How does he speak to the customer? What does he give the customer? What are the actions of this particular person in order to derive that kind of, that kind of response for that particular person? Through a series of observations, if you can record all of these and train all the others to say, look, this is what Ratna does when she interacts with customers. Can we also model this particular type of behavior? Can we do this? So you're actually getting other people to learn and also helping others to develop the same kind of competence. That is what you would call when you say, your competency mapping also becomes one uh, way, one thing that you can develop through observational learning. Am I making sense over here? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Uh,
Yes.
yes,
Ma'am,
Hitesh.
can we also relate it with the job description of that particular grade or that position?
What would you want to relate to the job description?
I just wanted to relate. Can we also relate to the job description? For example, if
What?
somebody is going to work on the managerial level, so that
Hmm,
person should be competent, and that person want to get promoted. The next
hmm.
level of competency should be there. So that is why that person will get promoted on that particular level.
Yes, definitely.
Is
So
this
through
both the?
observation.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, is it an example? Is it an example of observational learning? Uh, if the person says that I will watch how people behave, or how seniors behave, it could also be how they take actions. Then definitely, if you're trying to emulate that, if you're trying to work on that and behave accordingly, that definitely becomes an observational learning method. That also becomes a competency emulation exercise. Competency mapping is actually exercise where you're recording all these behaviors and getting people to behave in particular ways. So I don't want to go deeper into that because then we will not get time to talk about the other type of competency. But in competency mapping, there is also something called surface competency and threshold competencies. That means behavior, skills, and knowledge. All right. So
Yeah, ma'am.
that's what. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, we had done a project on in our organization on the competency mapping only. So one more thing
Okay.
was there was a criteria to know the need of the training need identification. So we came to
Okay.
know one point, yeah, we came to know one point also. The individually they have put it their own choice what they required the training. Then we did the analyze on the training need identification also. The training need gap was there.
Yes.
So we do the
Okay.
analysis. So one more we can get from the competency mapping.
Excellent, ma'am. Excellent. You have hit the nail on the head. We are saying that, through competency mapping, you're also recording the gaps, desired behavior and current behavior. And what is the gap? In order to arrive at the desired competency, you also have to demonstrate a desired behavior for which you need training. It's an excellent tool for deriving or by of arriving at training needs of people and organizing training interventions accordingly. Yes,
Yeah, it is
excellent.
helpful for to make a training calendar also because of the level of means employees.
Mhm.
Those are working on the machine tools and also they need their requirement. So we came to know that also one more thing in the our training calendar we can give them the trainings for this particular topics also from the seniors or from the outsiders. So it was very helpful to do the competency.
Did you organize your training interventions accordingly?
Yeah, ma'am.
Did you deliver? I mean, did you organize the training programs
Yeah, actually I
based on
got
the
the chance.
training
So
events? Okay, okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Recently we had done, so that's why I had idea about this. But whatever
Wonderful, wonderful.
whatever you explained right now, I get to know exactly. We had done on the topics on the titles only, but I came to know exactly what is the difference between the competence and the competency mapping.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. A lot of times what happens is that people confuse competence for competency, right? I may have all the competences, the skills and knowledge in this world, but unless I use that and I get the derived results, every time the same thing is done, only then it becomes a competency. So competency is where, it's a validated skill or knowledge of that particular person. Okay. And that can happen sometimes, later on through training people and through repetitive training, repeating the action. That's where we are talking about modeling. Thank you. Thank you so much. You made it
Yeah.
all the more interesting. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Now, friends, for the sake of theory, we are talking about four processes that happen in observational learning, as you think, socializing, social learning theory. Uh, these four processes are one, we are paying attention, watching the behavior. Okay, so attention also is a process in psychology where you're watching, looking, retain, and seeing what is being done. The second one is after attending and watching the behavior, is the person able to retain? When you say retain the behavior, I may watch 20 people doing something, but can I remember? And when I go back home or when I'm not watching that person, is it stored in my memory? That is very important. I may watch 20 people doing it. It's getting stored in my memory. All right. So that's one. Why we are looking at this, let me also tell you, I'll connect it to your visual learning and auditory learning and kinesthetic learning. Right. Uh, the third part where you're seeing is motor reproduction, where a person's physical and mental ability to repeat the action or to do the actions is at stake. Now, uh, many times we watch women sewing or stitching, doing embroidery. You watch how the women very fast they do, a certain type of stitching or embroidery. All these artisans or the tribal weavers. So you may watch that behavior, but are you able to remember the steps with which they did it? And later on tomorrow, if I take the thread and needle in my hand, will I be able to, do I have the physical capacity or the mental ability to be able to repeat what that particular person did? Now, this typically happens in cricket, right? We all watch cricket, but are we able to play cricket the way Mr. Sachin Tendulkar did or like a Virat Kohli does? Motor reproduction, right? We may remember how he does it, but are we able to repeat or get the same kind of, are we able to play the same kind of cricket that our ace cricketers play? It comes with skill and it comes with motor reproduction. It also comes with an innate ability sometimes. But the main factor, which Albert Bandura says, is the factor of motivation. That is why I have highlighted it here for you. What motivation do I have, or what reason do I have to learn and to retain, to watch, to retain, and to reproduce that particular type of behavior? So is it a positive reinforcer? Is it a negative reinforcer? Is it a reward or is it a punishment? This is the motivation factor which decides whether I learn a certain thing, a certain set of knowledge, or a certain set of skill, and whether I reproduce it and I use that at the workplace. Are we
Ma'am,
getting this?
yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am, could purpose also be a reason? Like Sachin has a purpose to be, say, for instance, he wants to be the best cricketer, so he would review his own shots with every for getting better next time, and and he would review probably the best players with been in past, and what is his skill sets to it. So I think attention, retention, and again the motor reproduction falls in place, getting better and better
Absolutely.
next time to achieve the
Hmm.
purpose.
This,
Yeah, and actually, yes.
yeah, yeah, continue.
Yeah, and same way, ma'am, even the upcoming or people who want to act in films, they
Hmm.
tend to watch actors like Amitabh Bachchan or Shah Rukh Khan, how they deliver a particular dialogue at a particular emotion, and
Hmm.
then they tend to they retain by practicing it in front of they repeat those dialogues, the scripts, and reproduce by looking
Yes, of course.
themselves in the mirror
Yes.
before they can present that or for auditions.
I'm
Yeah.
told that people like Shah Rukh Khan or even Mr. Bachchan, for that matter, they're continuously rehearsing their dialogue on the sets before they take the actual shot.
Right, ma'am. And is this also something that repetition also trains your subconscious mind by keep repeating certain behavior and certain kind of dialogues which one speaks to itself and they eventually presents
Hmm.
in front of the entire, say, the say if it's a conference or where you want to present actually. So probably that way also one can train oneself.
Definitely, definitely. It's actually about reinforcing or flexing those muscles, the flexing your brain cells. Now I'll go a little bit just for half a second. We can look at what you call as neuroplasticity. And when they say that the brain actually has the ability to, to change, it's called as there's a lot of new studies today. They're talking about neuroplasticity. And if you will go into the theory, I have a slide in a different PowerPoint, no time to show that now. Next week I'll show you that. But you're taking a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Do take a note of that somewhere and do look it up. I'll also bring the slide the next time. We're talking about whether people can function with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So when you say fixed mindset, you say this is all the
Ma'am, so in
learning that
fixed
I've done.
mindset, does even conditioning would also play a role then? The kind of
Yes, of course.
conditioning.
Yes. So when you have told yourself that there is nothing more to learn,
Yeah.
or I am like this only, I don't know dance, I don't know anything, then I will not, even if I watch somebody dancing, I will not try to repeat that. But if there is a growth mindset, I say, okay, fine. In order to be the best actor or a celebrity, I need to learn how to dance. And therefore, someone who doesn't may not be a great dancer like Shah Rukh Khan, but he has to practice so if he has to, shake a leg or two. Now that becomes
Yes.
retention and it also becomes motor reproduction. And what is the motivation for that? Now, here you will go to your motivational theories. Where at what stage are you? Are you at the roti kapra makan stage? Are you at the self-esteem stage? Or sometimes you may just learn because you want to be at a different level altogether, the self-actualization stage. Okay, so you can connect it to your motivation learning theories also. You can also connect it to theory X and theory Y, where are you being forced to learn or are you learning because you want to grow, right? So here, uh, we are talking about unless you go through all these processes, a person will not learn. I may watch 20 people doing 20 things, but I also need to flex practice. For example, they say that these bowlers or the batsmen, even when the match is not happening, they're at the stadium just practicing every day. Why? Because when you perform, it shouldn't be that you've not practiced. Classical singers, or all singers, they have their tanpura on from 5 o'clock in the morning and they keep on singing. Why? Because when it comes to the actual show, you need to perform through practice. That's your motor reproduction. Makes sense, everyone? It's 11:30. Uh, I just Okay. I've spoken to you about these four processes: attention, retention, motor reproduction, motivation. Uh, Now, how would you apply observational learning? Uh, this is very important for all of us, where we are talking about, when you can actually help people to overcome fears that they have. So the social learning theory is talking about, when you're if you're afraid of something. Like for example, one of my colleagues is extremely afraid of heights or getting into the lift. So somebody has to go with her over and over again. But if you take her many times upstairs through a lift and make her stand on the terrace and show her that nothing happens over here, probably in due course of time she would be able to overcome her phobia. But when you're talking of social learning, there is something called the Bobo doll experiment. The Bobo doll experiment. The Bobo doll is something like a doll which you can keep on hitting, and based on that, it's one way for people to this experiment was conducted where they realized that if a person is put in front of a Bobo doll, the person starts pounding or mauling the Bobo doll, and this came by observing others. So when people watched other people mauling them, they felt that aggression naturally comes in when you sometimes watch people behaving in an aggressive manner. Similarly, there is also the prison experiment, which was conducted. I'll speak to you about it in great detail in the next session because it's 11:30 now, and I guess we may have to, uh, kind of stop so that people you get your break for the next class. But when I'll speak to you about the prison experiment when people were put in simulations where a certain type of people were asked to behave as prisoners, and the others were asked to behave as jail staff. The jail staff actually started behaving in a very abusive manner in a even in a simulated setting. But somewhere through the learning, aggression became a part of their behavior. Similarly, in the Bobo doll experiment, when people looked at the doll, they felt that they have to keep on pounding. Aggression came out because they had that watched people behaving aggressively. Now, this is typically something that children also do. You watch abusive families, you watch abusive parents, you are bound to repeat the same behavior in your adulthood. All right? Unless somebody tells you that there is a punishment for abusive behavior. Same thing. Um, there was a blue tit and milk cream. So one bird, one bird through a funnel pulled out the cream from milk which was kept, and all the other birds watched that in due course of time. They learned how to suck out the cream from the milk. So you learn by observation, you see what other people are doing, and that is how you behave accordingly. All right. Um, and right now, not going into constructivist theory, because that will need me to speak for another 10 or 15 minutes. I don't want to do it in a hurry. We can cover that in the next class. All right. Um, any questions that you may have, whatever doubts you
Ma'am,
have, you can clear.
next time in next class, can you give us an example on positive, negative reinforcers and
Definitely.
positive
Definitely.
punishers and negative punishers? So
You
I
want to know
so
examples for
confusing. I
everything.
tried to understand with different examples, but I think if something one example which can fit may be different, I think we'll be able to help.
That,
So,
that.
thank
So that is noting down as an important thing to be covered in the next class. Definitely. What else? Any other areas?
Ma'am,
Just a brief. Yes,
yeah.
ma'am.
Ma'am, can we how do we consider demotion as promotion is a positive reinforcement, but how do we consider demotion as? Where do we fit that in?
How do you consider emotion in what? In learning?
Demotion. I'm talking about demotion. Like you have promotion for your job and demotion also, is it?
So is it a removal of a reward? Demotion is
You're
a
talking of emotion or demotion?
Demotion. Demotion.
Demotion is a negative, this one, not a reward, the addition of a punishment, no? Correct?
Okay. Addition of the punishment.
Addition of a punishment, right? Not addition of the reward,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
You demote people, it's, you're actually telling people that if you don't, perform or do a particular, behave in a particular way, you could be demoted.
Okay.
Insubordination could lead to demotion,
Correct.
right? Yes.
Thank
But we'll look at it example wise in the next class. We'll look at it step by step. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other doubts that anyone has, we can cover those in the next session. Next week, we look at constructive risk learning theories. We look at examples of all of these, and then we move on to the lecture method, a couple of cognitive methods of learning. Okay, it's 11:30, I guess. Can we stop here?
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Yes,
Alright,
ma'am. Thank you,
for
ma'am.
your
Yes, ma'am.
time.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Happy learning to all of you. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye.